Let the church arise. Welcome to Walking Through the Word for today. We're in John chapter 20 in verse 19. Now, Jesus has appeared now to Mary Magdalene, and Mary has been given messages to send on to the disciples. And so now the disciples are gathered because they went and they gathered. It says a couple of verses ago, it says that they left and went back to where the others were. So verse 19, on the evening of the first day, so we're setting the stage. This is all happening, boom, boom, boom. So remember, morning, Jesus' tomb empty. During the day, there's speculation, there's wonder. Mary's trying to convince them of what she's seen. And then on the evening of that first day, on that Sunday, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked, John is giving us this detail to help us understand and recognize what Jesus does is supernatural. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Now, there's a couple of things that we need to recognize here. First of all, we oftentimes talk about Acts, the book of Acts is the beginning of the church, but the truth is, this right here, this moment here, is the beginning of the church. And we're going to see Jesus pronounce that here in just a moment. But he gives them a blessing. He says, "Peace be with you." Now, this is the Jewish term shalom, and shalom means peace, but it means godly peace. And oftentimes in the Jewish customs, it was used as a greeting, like shalom, peace be with you. When Jesus does this, though, he's pronouncing a blessing upon them. And after he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Now, Thomas, as we'll see in a minute or later, gets a bad rap because he basically says in verse 25 and 26, look, I'm going to see it when I believe it, because he wasn't here. We've got 10 of the 12. Remember, one of them, Judas Iscariot, has died. He has hung himself because he was the betrayer. So we got 10 hanging. Thomas isn't there. And Thomas is like, I don't believe what's being said. I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it with my own eyes. Right now, in verse 20, the disciples are the same way. The other 10 are sitting there going, is this really Jesus? Are we hallucinating? Are we imagining this? And Jesus shows them his hands and his side. So even the disciples, the 10 that were there seeing him, were in disbelief. And then it says they were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. I would imagine there was an incredible amount of joyful weeping, just overwhelming of emotions, caught up, truly experiencing what was the lowest of lows and now is the highest of highs. Jesus is the Messiah. And again, Jesus says in verse 21, "Peace be with you." And here comes the moment when the church begins. "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." We are now a part of the mission of God. And then he breathes on them. And this is such a beautiful symbolic gesture. You remember all the way back in Genesis, what is it that God did to Adam to give life to him? He breathed upon him. He gave him the essence of life. Jesus is now giving the disciples the essence of life here. Now there's some debate. When Jesus breathes on them, it says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." There's some debate among theologians of whether this was the moment they received the Holy Spirit or they received the Holy Spirit in Acts. Frankly, it doesn't really matter because the Holy Spirit is already here. Remember, the Holy Spirit's with Jesus. Jesus and the Holy Spirit are always together. They're not separate. So the Holy Spirit is present at this moment. Are the disciples receiving the empowering of the Holy Spirit? Not yet. That comes in Acts. But right now, at this moment, they have believed, and now they receive the Holy Spirit. And now this next verse here in 23, people kind of look at it and go, what's going on? If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. And if you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. Does suddenly the 10 here, remember Thomas isn't here, does suddenly the 10 have this special ability that no one else has? No. This is, as Jesus said in verse 21, "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." This is a continuation of the mission. The church knows exactly how people receive forgiveness. They know exactly how people receive the forgiveness of sin, and that comes through belief in Jesus, what they themselves right now are experiencing. And so when Jesus says, if you do not forgive them, he's talking about basically if they haven't come to a place where they have received forgiveness through me, they will not be forgiven. This is not some special new thing. This is a continuation or a beginning, depending on how you want to look at it, of what the church's function is now going to be. Remember, what Jesus does and what the church does is now supposed to be the same thing. We are supposed to carry on the mission of Jesus Christ. We are not separate from Christ. We are carrying out what Christ has called us to do. And that is exactly what Jesus did here with this very powerful, very intimate, and very special commissioning. But like I said, there was one who was missing, and we'll talk about him next time.